Hi, everyone. So I'd like to so we're on day 5 for 40 Days of Hope. And when it came to a topic, I had wondered and prayed about it. And then I had a dream about the cart and the huskies. Usually people would say the cart and the horse, except for sometimes people had groups of horses to pull big, heavy things. And this was back in history. As for the reason I had dreamed about the cart and the huskies was the huskies they're sled dogs, but I've compared dogs and horses for a very long time, so sometimes I get dreams about horses and it means dogs, and sometimes I have dreams about dogs and it means horses. The cart and the horse, if we want our own way, the cart is in front of the horse, and when the horse is pulling our cart, the horse is directing us where we need to go. We do need to have control over the horse when the horse is pulling the cart to steer the horse in the direction we want the horse to go so that the horse and the cart will go in the direction we want. But putting the cart in front of the horse is not having a reality check of what needs to be done before we get what we want to have. And as I mentioned about that dream about the huskies and the cart, and I had a dream that the huskies were in these little slots and people were pulling the huskies. Well, in the reality, it's the other way around. The huskies pull the sleds. But huskies are long-term traveling dogs, so they do not want to be in strollers. And this is where I'm realizing that there are reasons behind people being controlling. Sometimes I have said things or have done things and they weren't ready for me to do it, so they were very pissed off and they're afraid that I would put them in their own little boxes where they have no other life. So that's where there are a lot of people angry at me. And that is one of the reasons why they may not be ready to help out. And I'd like to talk about hope when people are not yet ready to help out, because it is important. As for mentioning about the reasons, one of the main reasons for people not helping out, there's something called zones. Zones of trust. There's green, yellow, orange, red, gray, and black. The black zone is when people are ready to call the police. The gray zone is when they're red flagging and controlling. The red zone is when there's lack of communication. The orange and yellow zones, there's still distrust. We'll talk about that very soon. And the green zone is when they do have trust. And green zone is full trust. And therefore, when people are in a green zone, you are very sure that they will get permission. For the orange and yellow zones, they are zones of distrust, but at least with the yellow and orange zones, they do give permission. But the darker the zone, the slower they are to give permission. So the green zone, when people are in a green zone with you, they're saying, yes, I'm going to come and help you. I'm going to be part of your plan no matter where things go. The orange zone is when people will possibly give you a time, but you're not 100% sure how well it's going to follow through when they're in the yellow zone. When they're in an orange zone, then they are going to say maybe, and they might try to talk you out of the plan if they don't like it. If they're in the orange zone and they don't like your plan, they're going to try to talk you out of it. And those zones of trust matters so much when it comes to yourself and customer service and yourself and planning events and opportunities. The reasons for the zones of trust is something called perspectives. And like, you may see the shadow over the words, but you are able to see the words. And that matters very much. So there's many types of questions, and there are options in the perspectives. Those questions are about one's readiness to run the events. One of the questions is, what does it take to handle a big project? That question does matter, not just to the audience, but even to the project director itself. The project director should be thinking all the time, what does it take to run a big project? Because if they don't think about that, then they can't run one. And the audience is going to think about that to see if it's worth their time. The other question is, can I really trust her? What will she say next? And the what will she say next is, what will I say if people give me money for the project? Or if people help out? Or if people ignore me, what would I do next there? And as much as it's tempting to demand attention with, if they ignore me, I'll do this. Well, that doesn't always make people give in, because they have a belief about reinforcements and behavior. And they know giving reinforcements strengthen behavior. So even if I behave better when they give permission, they might even ask in their mind, if I give permission and she behaves better, what's going to happen if I have to fight with her? Well, you guys don't really have to fight with me about anything right now. I'm doing pretty well. But people are still going to be wary of what to do. The other question is, what has she done in the past? Now, pasts are not perfect. No, they never were. And I've done things in the past that I wish I've never done. And I learn from the past and I move forward. But some people do think about the past because they may have wounds, and most people are in denial about the wounds that they have because they don't want to look bad. The other question is going to be that people ask in their minds is, does she understand proper instructions? And that's a really good question when it comes to understanding proper instructions. If we don't understand proper instructions, we can't run the project. We all know that. But do I understand proper instructions? Well, that comes into perspective, millions of different perspectives that people can carry. If they think their way is a proper instruction, I can never follow it. But if they think that God's way is a proper instruction, but most people don't understand God's way. So that comes into some people thinking that I can't follow the proper instructions, so I shouldn't run the project center. Well, even though people haven't been helping out very well, I have been doing a few things to help with the project center. One of them is I have ordered these books called books on how to create a nonprofit organization. And those books do cost a lot of reading and a lot of time. But even though I'm in school, I should think about reading the books. But I may need to get lots of rest before I'm ready to read them properly. If you're wondering about hope when people are not available, I have an envelope. The envelope is to do with the fact that God wants us to tithe. So that's why I have an envelope. The 4 steps that I have, the Chinese will call it 5 steps, 1, 2, 3, 5, because they don't like the number 4. The first step is praying nonstop. Queen Esther prayed nonstop, and she did it for 3 days. The reason that she did pray nonstop was she was desperate for God to save her people. She was supposed to marry a king, but there was this guy that worked for the king, but he also wanted to kill Esther's people. And Esther found out that there was a risk of her people being under attack, so she couldn't eat and couldn't sleep and spent 3 days alone in her room just to pray for the people. I'm not in a point where I'm praying nonstop without eating or sleeping. The longest I've went with not eating and not sleeping and not drinking just to pray is 20 hours was the longest for me. And that was just over not having a good enough letter to get back into Tyndale University. But I eventually found an answer that I could go back to Durham College. So I did go back to Durham College in the fall of 2015. And going back to Durham College, I've been accepting of it because if I went back to Tyndale, I would have been spending a lot more money and it would have been a lot more harder. And it would have been harder for me to go back to travel around the world, because once I got a job, I didn't have to rely on my parents' money anymore, which I feel a lot better. But at the same time, it is hard. So I'm actually happy about not going back to Tyndale yet. I don't know when I would ever go back. I have no idea. But I'm glad they didn't go back to Tyndale because of how much it costs. And there's a lot of projects that I have to get done before going back to Tyndale, so that's one of the reasons why I'm glad of not going back to Tyndale. The second thing on the envelope is, it's called Working on Little Projects While Waiting. And sometimes we have to wait and wait and wait. But obviously, we're not supposed to do nothing while we're waiting. So there is a biblical example of what some people have done while waiting, and one of them is working. Another example from the Bible was the Apostle Paul was used to build tents in between his travels. The reason he did that, he did it to serve the people. In life, we're not supposed to do nothing. We're supposed to do something. And it's hard to see the sense of it when COVID happened almost 2 years ago. COVID's still happening, but it's in a different form. And more variants are coming. And as much as people don't want to believe it, they're going to eventually be sorry for it and pay for what they've done to themselves after doubting how bad COVID's going to get. But this is a whole nother thing. But the reason that people have been chasing things before COVID and during COVID is those people felt like they're being put in boxes and they want to get themselves out of those boxes. But they don't understand that they're categorized. So this is one of the reasons why God allowed COVID to happen on this earth. Some people are obedient, but even through any of these things, we are all having reality checks of what God wants us to do with our lives because COVID happened. The next step in our what to do while waiting for people's availability is believing in ourselves. It's hard to believe in ourselves when it comes to our mental health. But the first step in believing in ourselves is when we get out of bed, do something with our hands. Do something with and that is in the house. Because it is going to feed our brain. Whether it would be play a game, watch a video, read a book. And the final step is opening our eyes to the changes that need to be done. There is a part in the Bible where King David has tended sheep. He was a shepherd. He was always working with the sheep. That was his project. But he knew that God wanted him to do another task, which was called kill this big giant Goliath. But the people in the land didn't believe that David could do that because he was not anything close to the size of Goliath. And all the other people were scared, so they tried to talk David out of fighting Goliath. But God was with David at the stream when he picked up the 5 stones. He put the stones in his pocket and he threw the stone, put a stone in the slingshot, aimed it at Goliath. The stone, how could the stone kill Goliath? Was it the sharp throw? Well, he did make the throw, but God made the stone fly faster in using it to kill Goliath. But the question is, could the stone kill Goliath? It'd be like us being killed with a piece of sand being shot at us. It's hard to believe that some things happen, but God made this possible. Once that task of David killing Goliath was done, then his people started celebrating that Goliath was dead. Because not only that David killed Goliath with the slingshot, he cut Goliath's head off and showed the people that Goliath is officially dead. I know this has been a bit of a talk, and we have been talking about hope through people not being involved. And I know that people can get involved even if they have never been involved before, or even if I have never had people involved with my projects. I've been doing a lot of the work. Either by myself or maybe with only 1 or 2 friends. But even if there hasn't been many people involved, they could be involved. I know that they could. I don't know when. While I don't know when, I know that there's a time and a place. And sometimes if we're in the middle of something and it's not working, we have to put it away, rest, and then observe the situation and find out how we're going to work this through. For anyone who tunes in after watching this video, I really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, you can post in the comments, and you can let me know in the comments if there's anything I can improve on. Thank you very much.